Elizabeth Haysom. She had the Astor bloodline, an Ivy League education, and enough family money to never work a day in her life. Elizabeth Haysom was supposed to be America's golden girl. Instead, she helped orchestrate the butchering of her own parents. When police found Derek and Nancy Haysom at their Virginia estate, Derek had been stabbed 36 times and nearly decapitated. Nancy's throat was slashed so deeply, investigators initially suspected cult involvement. Elizabeth Roxanne Haysom was born April 15, 1964, in Rhodesia, to extraordinary privilege. Her father, Derek, was a 72-year-old retired Canadian steel executive. Her mother, Nancy, was an artist descended from the wealthy Astor family dynasty. They moved across continents before settling at their Virginia estate with the whimsical name Loose Chippings. Elizabeth attended elite boarding schools in England before landing at the University of Virginia on scholarship. By all appearances, she had everything, but 2 English psychiatrists had diagnosed her as borderline schizophrenic and a pathological liar. She was using heroin, LSD, and alcohol while still a teenager. Her boyfriend Jens Soering nicknamed her fabrications "pots," perversions of the truth. In the fall of 1984, Elizabeth met Jens Soering, an 18-year-old German diplomat's son. Both were scholarship students. Both were brilliant. Both were deeply disturbed. Their relationship became what psychologists would later call a folie à deux, a shared psychosis between 2 people feeding off each other's darkness. The Haysoms despised Jens. They threatened to cut Elizabeth off financially if she didn't end it. Elizabeth responded by writing letters dripping with hatred. In one, she wrote that she prayed her mother would use a fireplace poker on herself. She fantasized openly about her parents' deaths. At trial, she admitted it had been her fantasy for years that they would die. It didn't matter how. On March 30, 1985, the plan came together. Elizabeth and Jens drove from Charlottesville to Washington, D.C. While Elizabeth created an alibi by ordering room service, buying movie tickets to Witness and Stranger Than Paradise, and carefully keeping receipts, Jens drove the rental car 200 miles back to Bedford County. What happened at Loose Chippings was savage beyond comprehension. Derek Haysom, 72 years old, was stabbed 36 times, nearly decapitated. Nancy suffered at least 6 stab wounds before her throat was slashed. The brutality was so extreme that the rental car logged 669 miles, the exact distance for the Washington to Lynchburg to Washington route. For 6 months, Elizabeth and Jens acted like nothing happened. They attended classes. Elizabeth went to her parents' memorial service. Then, in October 1985, they fled to Europe using false identities. They were arrested in London 9 months later for check fraud. And here's where it gets bizarre. Jens had been dragging around a suitcase filled with incriminating evidence. Letters discussing the murders, travel receipts, everything. When asked why, he called himself a hoarder. During her trial, prosecutor James Updike forced Elizabeth to read her own hateful letters aloud. The judge said he'd lost sleep over this case. She pleaded guilty to 2 counts of accessory before the fact to murder. 90 years, 2 consecutive 45-year terms. But in 2009, DNA testing excluded both Elizabeth and Jens from evidence at the crime scene. After 32 years in prison, both were paroled in 2019. Elizabeth was deported to Canada. She hasn't spoken publicly since. Jens now appears on German talk shows proclaiming his innocence. Elizabeth's half-brother Howard testified she was still lying. He believes she was in the house when their parents were butchered. 2 brilliant teenagers, 2 wealthy parents, 1 savage double murder that destroyed multiple lives, all because a girl couldn't stand being told who she could love. But this next case involves something far more sinister, because at least Elizabeth Haysom's victims were adults. The girl you're about to meet helped kidnap and murder an 8-year-old child who was just trying to cross the street safely. Terry Lynn McClintock. When 8-year-old Tori Stafford grabbed the stranger's hand to cross the street, she thought she was being safe. The woman had promised to show her a puppy, a Shih Tzu, the same breed Tori had at home. Within hours, that little girl would be beaten to death with a claw hammer, buried under rocks in a remote field. The woman's name was Terry Lynn McClintock. She was 18 years old. Victoria Tori Stafford was a grade 3 student at Oliver Stevens Public School. She had survived a liver transplant at age 5. She had battled lymphoma and won. She loved the color purple, watched Hannah Montana, and adored Halloween because she loved dressing up. She was a fighter. She was a survivor. On April 8, 2009, she became a victim. Terry Lynn McClintock's life began in chaos. Her biological mother was an exotic dancer struggling with addiction. She was given up for adoption, but that didn't provide safety. The warning signs appeared shockingly early. At around age 8, McClintock reportedly microwaved a small family dog until it screamed, a documented predictor of future violent behavior. By her teens, she was using opiates, OxyContin, and morphine daily. At 16, she attacked her adoptive mother with such violence she left her partially blind in one eye. By 17, she had assault convictions across multiple Ontario cities. In February 2009, McClintock met Michael Rafferty, a 28-year-old who repeatedly asked her to help kidnap a young female. He told her younger girls were easier to manipulate. On April 8th, Rafferty showed up unannounced at McClintock's house. They drove past Tori's elementary school multiple times. Around 3:15 in the afternoon, as children were dismissed, Rafferty told McClintock to prove she wasn't all talk. At 3:32, security cameras captured McClintock approaching Tori, the only child walking alone. McClintock introduced herself and asked if Tori wanted to see her dog. Tori said yes. As they walked toward Rafferty's car, Tori grabbed McClintock's hand to cross the street. McClintock pushed Tori into the back seat. They drove north on Highway 401. At a Home Depot in North Guelph, security cameras captured McClintock purchasing a claw hammer and garbage bags at approximately 5 in the afternoon. They continued driving to a secluded area near Mount Forest, Ontario, more than 100 kilometers from Woodstock. What happened next has two versions, both from McClintock herself. In her first confession, she said Rafferty sexually assaulted Tori while she walked away. She heard Tori's voice saying, "Make him stop, make him stop." In her second confession, McClintock admitted she delivered the fatal blows with the hammer herself. At least 4 blows to the head. Tori also suffered 16 broken ribs. 103 days later, Tori's body was found wrapped in garbage bags under a pile of rocks. She was still wearing her tough girl t-shirt. McClintock pleaded guilty to first-degree murder on April 28, 2010. Life imprisonment with no possibility of parole for 25 years. She won't be eligible until 2034 at age 44. Prison sources reported that McClintock showed not one bit of remorse. In 2018, McClintock was transferred to an Indigenous healing lodge with no fenced perimeter. Public outcry was immediate. She was moved back to a medium-security prison within weeks. Rafferty was convicted after trial and received the same sentence. Life with no parole for 25 years. An 18-year-old woman approached a child, promised her a puppy, then helped rape, torture, and murder her. All because a predator told her to prove she wasn't all talk. But the next case proves that monsters come in all forms because Shauna Hoare didn't target a stranger. She helped her boyfriend kidnap, kill, and dismember his own stepsister, a 16-year-old girl who had begged authorities for help months before her death. Shauna Hoare. She was 21 years old when she helped her boyfriend kidnap, suffocate, and dismember his 16-year-old stepsister. They cut Becky Watts into 8 pieces with a circular saw, wrapped the parts in cling film, then ordered takeaway and played Monopoly. Shauna Hoare and Nathan Matthews, a case that proved some monsters hunt in pairs. Rebecca Becky Watts was 16 years old, living in Bristol, England. She had an older stepbrother named Nathan Matthews, 28. Nathan's girlfriend was Shauna Hoare. Becky had told a school psychologist that Nathan scared her. That warning went nowhere. The relationship between Hoare and Matthews began when she was just 14 or 15. He was in his early 20s. Before they murdered together, they had exchanged text messages about kidnapping pretty petite girls. On February 19, 2015, Nathan and Shauna went to Becky's home while her parents were out. Nathan suffocated Becky in her bedroom. The pathologist counted more than 40 bruises on her body. After she was dead, he stabbed her 15 times. Then they dismembered her body. Using a circular saw, they cut Becky into 8 pieces. They wrapped the body parts in cling film and shopping bags. That evening, they ordered takeaway food and played Monopoly. Becky's torso was found on March 3rd in a garden shed about 2 miles from her home. The remaining parts were nearby. She had been missing for 12 days. Nathan Matthews was found guilty of murder, sentenced to life with a minimum of 33 years. Shauna Hoare was found guilty of manslaughter. She received 17 years. In September 2023, Shauna Hoare was released after serving approximately half her sentence. She was given a new identity for her protection. Becky's family was devastated. Her grandfather said, "That woman helped cut up my granddaughter and put her in bags, and now she walks free." A 16-year-old girl who had tried to report her fears about her stepbrother, ignored, kidnapped, suffocated, stabbed, dismembered. Her killers ate takeaway and played board games the same night. But the next case proves that sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who seem perfectly normal, because Natalie Keepers wasn't a troubled teen. She was a NASA intern with a promising future, and she helped plan and cover up the murder of a 13-year-old girl for the thrill of it. Natalie Keepers. She was a NASA Goddard Space Flight Center intern, a Virginia Tech engineering student in the top 15% of her class. A girl who attended science camp and volunteered for youth enrichment programs. Natalie Keepers seemed destined for success. Instead, she helped plan and cover up the murder of a 13-year-old girl because she wanted to feel special. Nicole Madison Lovell was 13 years old. She had survived a liver transplant at age 5 and battled health problems her whole life. She was bullied relentlessly for her weight and her medical scars. She sought escape online. That's where she met David Eisenhower, an 18-year-old Virginia Tech freshman and track athlete. He used the Kik username Dr_Tombstone. Nicole thought she was talking to a potential boyfriend. She was actually being groomed by a predator. Natalie Keepers was Eisenhower's friend at Virginia Tech. According to court testimony, they discussed killing Nicole for weeks before it happened. Keepers didn't just know about the plan. She helped refine it. On January 26, 2016, Keepers bought a shovel. The night of January 27th, Nicole snuck out of her house. She climbed through her bedroom window. She thought she was meeting a boy who liked her. Eisenhower drove Nicole to a remote wooded area near the North Carolina border. There, he stabbed her 14 times. She fought for her life. His blood was found at the scene. She had wounded him during the struggle. After the murder, Eisenhower sent Keepers a text message. "It's done." Keepers drove to meet him. Together, they dragged Nicole's body to his car. While Nicole's corpse was in the trunk, Keepers went to Walmart and casually purchased cleaning supplies. Surveillance footage captured her shopping while a 13-year-old's body was in the vehicle. They drove to North Carolina and dumped Nicole's remains. Keepers took Nicole's belongings back to her dorm room, including a Minions blanket the girl had loved. In FBI interviews, Keepers admitted everything. When asked why she participated, she gave an answer that shocked investigators. "I was excited to be part of something secretive and special." She described herself and Eisenhower as sociopaths. She told him, "You're a sociopath, and I'm a sociopath in training." The jury deliberated for less than 90 minutes. They found Natalie Keepers guilty of accessory before the fact to first-degree murder and concealing a body. She was sentenced to 40 years in prison. Nicole's mother spoke at sentencing. "You knew what was going to happen to my daughter. You could have stopped it. You didn't. You helped." Keepers is incarcerated at Fluvanna Correctional Center in Virginia. She'll be eligible for parole in 2058 at age 62. Eisenhower received 50 years. He'll be eligible in 2066 at age 68. A NASA intern, a promising engineering student, a girl who bought a shovel knowing it would be used to bury a child, all because she wanted to feel special. But the final case in Part 1 might be the most disturbing of all. Because Tess Dam didn't help kill a stranger. She ordered the murder of her own mother, then partied in her house for 3 weeks while the body decomposed in the garage. If you're liking this video and you're not subscribed yet, now's the time. We drop new cases every day. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Tess Dam. For 3 weeks, she threw parties in her mother's house, used her mother's debit card, went car surfing with her boyfriend for fun. Meanwhile, her mother's decomposing body was stuffed in the trunk of a Subaru, parked 20 feet away in the garage. Tess Dam was 15 years old, and she had orchestrated the entire thing. Tess Dam and her mother Linda had a combustible relationship. On her MySpace page, Tess wrote that her life was falling apart and described her mother as an angry, raging, functional alcoholic. In the year before the murder, police visited the Dam home 31 times on runaway reports. Tess repeatedly fled. She was always returned by authorities. She felt trapped. In fall 2006, just months before the murder, Tess attended 3 different schools in 2 states over 2 months. The constant upheaval prevented her from forming any stable friendships or support systems. In late 2006, Tess met Brian Grove, 17, while both were doing court-mandated community service for juvenile offenses. They bonded over their troubled home lives, and they started planning an escape that would require Linda's elimination. This wasn't impulsive. Over several weeks, they discussed how to do it, where to dispose of the body, what to do afterward. Premeditated murder. On the evening of February 3, 2007, Tess, Brian, and a friend named Jared took Linda out to dinner. Throughout the meal, Linda kept calling Tess's phone. Each call irritated Tess more. When they returned home, Tess told Brian, "It's time." While Tess and Jared drove around creating an alibi, Brian entered the house alone. Linda expressed relief that Tess hadn't been there, so Grove wouldn't be visiting. That comment was the last straw. Brian grabbed Linda and choked her until she lost consciousness. Then he got a kitchen knife and stabbed her 18 times, repeatedly in the neck and mouth. The violence was extreme and personal. Their first attempt to dispose of the body failed. They drove to a landfill but got stuck in mud. Their second attempt was equally unsuccessful. They tried burying Linda in a cemetery, but the frozen February ground made digging impossible. They dug her back up and returned her body to the trunk of her own Subaru. For 3 weeks, Linda Dam's decomposing body remained in that trunk, parked in her own garage, and Tess and Brian lived in Linda's house as if nothing had happened. They threw parties with unsuspecting friends, used Linda's debit card for purchases, went car surfing for fun. Friends who visited noticed a terrible smell but assumed it was trash or a dead animal. Nobody suspected the truth. On February 28th, a suspicious friend called police. When officers opened the garage, the smell was overwhelming. Linda had been dead for approximately 3 weeks, stabbed 18 times, stuffed in her own trunk while her daughter partied 20 feet away. Brian Grove pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. He received 40 years. Tess was charged as both a juvenile and an adult. She pleaded guilty and received 23 years, 5 in youth corrections, 18 in adult prison. Experts testified that Tess was the mastermind. Brian was the executor, but Tess was the architect. In April 2019, Tess Dam was released on parole after serving approximately 12 years. She was 27 years old. She wrote to the parole board, "It is difficult to articulate the extent of my remorse for the choices I made that cost my mother her life." She changed her name. She lives under strict parole supervision. Brian Grove remains in prison and will be eligible for parole in 2033. A 15-year-old girl ordered her mother's murder, then lived in her house, spent her money, and threw parties while the body rotted in the garage. 3 weeks of casual cruelty before anyone noticed Linda Dam was gone. Valerie Parashumti. She had been drinking blood since she was 10 years old. By 18, Valerie Parashumti had graduated from self-harm to something far darker. And when a vulnerable 16-year-old runaway showed up at her door looking for a place to crash, Valerie saw an opportunity she couldn't resist. Stacey Mitchell was from Dorset, England. 16 years old, sweet, trusting. She'd had an argument with her parents and run away. A mutual friend suggested she could stay with Valerie Parashumti and her girlfriend Jessica Stasinowski for a few days. Stacey had known them for exactly 3 days when they decided to kill her. But here's where this case gets truly disturbing. Parashumti and Stasinowski didn't just kill Stacey. They tried to kill her multiple times first, and failed. First, they poured cooking oil all over the bathroom floor. The plan was simple. Stacey would slip, crack her skull, and die. They would claim it was an accident. But Stacey didn't fall. Next, they crushed glass into tiny pieces and mixed it into Stacey's drink. They hoped she would swallow it and bleed internally. Either she didn't drink it, or it wasn't enough to cause serious harm. Each failed attempt only made them more determined. On December 17, 2006, they decided to stop being subtle. First, they gave Stacey sleeping pills. As she became drowsy and defenseless, Parashumti crept up behind her with a concrete paving slab. She bludgeoned Stacey's head so many times, and with such force that the concrete slab broke into pieces. While Parashumti swung the concrete, Stasinowski strangled Stacey with a dog chain belt, pulling it tight around her neck. The attack lasted 45 minutes, far longer than needed to kill anyone. They prolonged it deliberately. And here's the detail that made investigators physically sick. During the murder, both women became sexually aroused. They kissed over Stacey's dying body. They laughed and mocked her British accent. They filmed portions of the attack on a mobile phone, making jokes as she died. Forensic psychologists would later testify that both women derived sexual pleasure from inflicting pain. One psychologist stated plainly in court, she was sexually aroused by the infliction of violence. After killing Stacey, they stuffed her body headfirst into a household wheelie bin, a garbage bin. Then they put it in a shed behind the house, and then they went shopping. Surveillance footage captured them at a hardware store the next day. Their shopping list included a chainsaw to dismember the body, lime to speed up decomposition, extra garbage bags, and cleaning supplies. They never followed through with the dismemberment, but the shopping list proved just how calculated they were. When police eventually found Stacey's body and arrested the two women, their behavior in court shocked everyone. At their first appearance, Parashumti and Stasinowski snickered and giggled in the dock. The judge had to reprimand them. This is not a humorous matter. A young girl is dead. Both pleaded guilty to willful murder At sentencing, Judge Peter Blaxell called the killing sexually perverse and evil. He sentenced both women to life imprisonment with a minimum of 24 years before parole. But he also made an unusual recommendation. The two should be separated for life and never have contact again. Judge Blaxell explained why. There is a real risk that if you are ever together again, you will feed off each other's worst impulses and pose a danger to others. Parashumti will be eligible for parole in 2030. She'll be around 42 years old. Whether she gets out depends on whether the parole board believes she's no longer a threat. Given the sexual sadism component of her crime, many experts doubt she'll ever be released. But Australia isn't the only country that's produced teenage killers who shocked the world. In Argentina, a beautiful law student with thousands of Instagram followers would commit a murder so calculated and then post about it so coldly that she became the youngest woman in the country's history to receive a life sentence. Nahir Galarza. She posted the tribute while his body was still warm. Hours after shooting her boyfriend twice, Nahir Galarza uploaded a photo of them together to Instagram with the caption, "5 years together, fighting, going forward and coming back, but always with the same love. I love you forever, my angel." Friends commented their condolences. She accepted them, playing the grieving girlfriend while knowing exactly what she had done. Nahir Galarza was 19 years old, a first-year law student, a competitive field hockey player, thousands of Instagram followers. Her father was a provincial police officer who worked undercover in dangerous drug cases. By all outward appearances, she had the perfect life. Fernando Pastorizzo was 20, her on-again, off-again boyfriend since she was around 14. They dated for 5 years. The relationship was passionate but volatile. They fought constantly, broke up repeatedly, but always got back together. Until Fernando decided he was done. In the weeks before his death, Fernando had been pulling away, spending more time with friends, responding to Nahir's messages less and less. For someone accustomed to being the center of his world, this was unacceptable. Text messages recovered from both phones showed Nahir becoming increasingly desperate, then increasingly angry. December 29, 2017, around 5:15 in the morning, Fernando was riding his motorcycle through the streets of Gualeguaychú. Nahir was with him. At some point, she got off the motorcycle. Moments later, she shot him twice with her father's 9mm Bursa Thunder service pistol. The first bullet entered Fernando's back. The second struck his chest from about 50 centimeters away. Close range, deliberate. Fernando collapsed on the street. Nahir walked 20 blocks home, returned the gun to where she'd taken it from her father's belongings, and went to bed. A passing motorist found Fernando's body around 6 in the morning. He was pronounced dead at the scene. And then came the Instagram post. Later that morning, before police had publicly identified the victim, Nahir uploaded a photo of her and Fernando smiling together. "5 years together. I love you forever, my angel." The post went viral. Condolences poured in. Nahir accepted them all, playing the role of devastated girlfriend while knowing she had killed him just hours earlier. Police initially suspected Nahir's father after ballistics traced the bullets to his service weapon, but security camera footage told a different story. The cameras captured someone matching Nahir's description, walking 6 blocks from the crime scene shortly after the estimated time of death. That evening, as pressure mounted, Nahir confessed, "Enough, it was me, it was me, it was me. Take responsibility away from my father and my family." At trial, Nahir claimed the gun accidentally discharged. Twice. She said Fernando had been violent, that they were fighting, that the gun went off during a struggle. The prosecution destroyed this defense methodically. Ballistics expert Javier Azcu testified, "In my years of experience, I have never seen or heard of any person shooting twice by accident. The gun does not fire on its own. The wound trajectory showed the second shot was fired from 50 centimeters away. Too far to be part of any struggle. Fernando was likely already down from the first shot when she fired the second, and Fernando had no defensive wounds, no evidence of any fight. This wasn't self-defense. This was an execution. On July 3, 2018, Nahir Galarza was convicted of aggravated murder. At 19 years, 7 months, and 21 days old, she became the youngest woman in Argentine history to receive a life sentence. In Argentina, that means a minimum of 35 years before parole eligibility. But the story didn't end there. After conviction, Nahir made explosive allegations. She claimed her father was the actual killer, that he murdered Fernando in a jealous rage and forced her to take the blame. She provided no evidence. The court rejected this claim. She has never shown public remorse for Fernando's death. She maintains she was either acting in self-defense or that her father was the real killer. The evidence supports neither version. In 2024, Amazon Prime Video released a dramatized film about the case that portrayed Nahir sympathetically. Fernando's family condemned it. They are profiting from our son's murder and turning his killer into a celebrity. Nahir Galarza will not be eligible for parole consideration until 2053. She'll be 55 years old. Given the high-profile nature of the case and her complete lack of remorse, many legal experts believe she'll serve far longer than the 35-year minimum, possibly her entire natural life. But if you think posting on Instagram hours after killing your boyfriend is cold, wait until you hear about the Tennessee mother who killed her own toddler, hid the body, and spent months making TikToks and going on vacation while the entire state searched for her missing child. Megan Boswell. For 2 months, no one saw Evelyn Mae Boswell. Her mother always had an excuse. She's sleeping. She's with her father. She's sick. She's with a babysitter. Meanwhile, the 15-month-old's body was stuffed inside a trash can, wrapped in aluminum foil and plastic bags, hidden in a playhouse. And Megan Boswell was making TikToks. Megan Boswell was 17 when she gave birth to Evelyn Mae Boswell on December 26, 2018. She was still legally a child herself when she became a mother. From the start, Megan struggled. She showed limited interest in Evelyn, often leaving her with relatives for extended periods. Friends and family noticed she seemed more interested in partying and dating than caring for her daughter. Evelyn was a beautiful toddler with blonde hair and blue eyes. She loved playing with toys, watching Cocomelon, spending time with her grandmother. She was beginning to walk and speak her first words. She should have had her entire life ahead of her. The last confirmed sighting of Evelyn by anyone other than Megan was December 10th or 11th, 2019. After that, she vanished. But nobody reported her missing. For approximately 2 months, Megan made excuses whenever family members asked to see Evelyn. She's sleeping. She's with her father. She's sick. You can't visit. I'll bring her by next week. 2 months of lies. On February 18th, 2020, Megan's grandfather finally reported Evelyn missing. He had become suspicious after months of never seeing his great-granddaughter. When police began investigating, Megan told them over 10 different stories. Each one contradicted the last. Evelyn was with her father, who was deployed with the army in Louisiana. Investigators contacted him. He hadn't seen his daughter in months. Megan had blocked him from all contact. Evelyn's grandmother had given her to a couple for a better life. False. Evelyn was with a babysitter whose name Megan couldn't remember. Convenient. Eventually, Megan claimed Evelyn had been kidnapped. 10 different stories. All of them lies. While Tennessee Bureau of Investigation agents and thousands of volunteers searched for Evelyn, Megan showed no signs of distress. Instead, she took trips to Gatlinburg with her new boyfriend, Hunter Wood. She posted on social media about her relationship. She made TikTok videos. She went shopping and out to restaurants. Investigators noted Megan displayed absolutely no normal parental concern for a missing child. And then there was the housing application. When Megan applied for housing with her new boyfriend Hunter, she listed only herself and Hunter as household members. Not Evelyn. Text messages showed why. Hunter had made it clear he didn't want to raise another man's child. On March 6, 2020, Megan's grandfather led authorities to a shed on his property. Inside was a small playhouse, one that had been built for Megan when she was a child. Inside that playhouse was Evelyn's body. The autopsy revealed how Evelyn died: asphyxiation through 4 simultaneous mechanisms. First, she was wrapped so tightly in a fleece blanket that it left visible imprints on her skin. Second, aluminum foil was wrapped around her head, covering her nose and mouth. Third, she was placed inside a black trash bag. Fourth, her small body was stuffed headfirst into a kitchen trash can, bent into what the medical examiner called a distorted fetal position. And on that aluminum foil wrapped around her baby's face, Megan's fingerprint. Forensic pathologist Dr. Amy McMichael testified, this was not an accidental asphyxia. The manner of death was a homicide. Megan was charged with 19 counts, including first-degree premeditated murder, felony murder, aggravated child abuse, aggravated child neglect, and 15 counts of failure to report a death. 1 count for each day she didn't report. Her trial finally began in February 2025. After 4.5 hours of deliberation, the jury found Megan Boswell guilty on all 19 counts. At sentencing, Evelyn's great-grandfather addressed Megan directly. You took away the one person in this world who loved you unconditionally. Evelyn would have grown up to be a beautiful, smart, loving person. Instead, she died alone and afraid because of you. Evelyn's paternal grandmother said, you were supposed to protect her. You were supposed to love her. Instead, you suffocated her and threw her in the trash like garbage. Judge James Goodwin sentenced Megan Boswell to life in prison plus 33 additional years. She won't be eligible for parole until approximately 2074. She'll be 73 years old. Following Evelyn's death, Tennessee passed Evelyn's law. It requires parents to report a missing child under 12 within 24 hours. Failure to do so is now a felony. It shouldn't have taken a dead baby to pass that law. But it did. A mother who killed her own toddler is horrifying enough. But what about a granddaughter who slaughtered the grandparents who took her in, then threw parties in their house while their bodies decomposed in the bedroom? Cassandra Bjorhe. For a week, Cassandra Bjorhe lived in her grandparents' house with their bodies rotting in the bedroom. She ordered Chinese takeout with their credit cards. She smoked weed. She threw parties with friends who had no idea there were corpses 20 feet away. And when the smell got too strong, she just sealed the door with caulk. Cassandra Bjorge was 17 years old, living with her maternal grandparents, Randall and Wendy Bjorhe, both 63. She had moved in about 18 months earlier after her mother couldn't handle her behavior problems anymore. The family hoped a fresh start would help. Instead, things got worse. In those 18 months, police responded to the Bjorhe home 31 times. 18 calls were for runaway incidents. Multiple calls were for domestic disputes. At least one call was for Cassandra assaulting her grandmother. At 16, Cassandra was charged with battery after attacking Wendy. She received probation and then continued living in the same house with the woman she had beaten. Despite everything, Randall and Wendy kept trying. The night before they died, Wendy texted family members, "I'm going to bed soon. Maybe tomorrow will be better. All I can do is hope for the best and expect the worst. It shouldn't be this hard for any of us." Those were her last words. Cassandra's boyfriend was Johnny Ryder, 19 years old. He came from an equally troubled background. They bonded over their resentment of authority figures, and together, they developed a plan, not just to kill Cassandra's grandparents, but to embark on a multi-family killing spree. Phase 1, kill Randall and Wendy Bjorhe. Phase 2, kill Johnny's family members. Phase 3, kill Cassandra's mother. They viewed these murders as liberation, removing the adults who controlled them. April 1st, 2017. Cassandra and Johnny waited outside the Bjorhe home until the lights went out. Confirmation that Randall and Wendy had gone to bed. Using her key, Cassandra let herself and Johnny into the house. They moved quietly toward the bedroom. Johnny attacked Randall first with a tire iron, beating him, kicking him, stomping on him while Wendy watched in horror. Cassandra turned on her grandmother. She later testified she experienced a surge of energy as she beat Wendy. After beating both victims unconscious, the teens duct-taped their hands and feet. Then they slit both their throats with knives. The wounds were deep and deliberate, meant to ensure death. Both victims bled out in their own bedroom. What happened next shocked even seasoned homicide investigators. Cassandra and Johnny remained in the house for approximately 1 week, with the decomposing bodies of Randall and Wendy just rooms away. During that week, they ordered Chinese takeout using the Bjorhe's credit cards. They smoked marijuana throughout the house. They threw parties with unsuspecting friends. They used the grandparents' vehicle to drive around town. They posted on social media as if life was normal. To mask the decomposition, they sealed the bedroom door with caulk, sealed the windows with caulk and tape, poured bleach on and around the bodies, burned candles and incense. Friends who visited said they noticed a terrible smell, but they accepted Cassandra's explanation. Something died in the walls. On April 8th, Cassandra and Johnny drove to Johnny's family home to execute Phase 2. But there were unfamiliar cars in the driveway, visitors they didn't expect. They abandoned the plan. Frustrated, Johnny's rage boiled over. He attacked his sister and her boyfriend with a baseball bat. Police were called. When officers noticed they had arrived in a vehicle registered to Randall and Wendy Bjorhe, they decided to conduct a welfare check. That evening, police arrived at the Bjorhe home. They knocked. No answer. The smell was overwhelming. Officers forced entry and immediately discovered the bodies. A SWAT team located Cassandra and Johnny the next day. Both had self-inflicted wrist wounds, apparent suicide attempts that failed. They were taken into custody and charged with murder. The evidence was overwhelming. Tire iron with Randall's blood, knives used in the throat slitting, duct tape matching what was on the victims, text messages discussing the murders, credit card statements, social media posts of them partying. Both eventually confessed. Facing the possibility of the death penalty, both accepted plea deals. Guilty to 2 counts of malice murder, armed robbery, concealing a death, and tampering with evidence. Judge Deborah Turner addressed them before sentencing. "I'm not sure I've ever imagined such a well-planned, despicable, heinous act to be committed by 2 such young people. You didn't just kill these people, you tortured them. You made them watch each other die. Then you partied in their home while their bodies rotted." Both received 2 consecutive life sentences, plus 21 additional years. They won't be eligible for parole until approximately 2078. Cassandra will be around 78 years old. Cassandra's mother, April, gave a victim impact statement. "My parents tried to save my daughter when I couldn't. They gave her love, stability, and a home. She repaid them by slitting their throats and throwing parties while they decomposed in their bedroom. I've lost my daughter and my parents in one horrific act." Wendy's sister added, "Wendy texted me that night saying she hoped tomorrow would be better. Tomorrow never came for her." 31 police calls in 18 months. And still, nobody saw this coming. Or maybe they just didn't want to. But if you think that's the most brazen display of violence from a teenage girl, you haven't met the 18-year-old who live-streamed her attack on Snapchat, pouring boiling water, stabbing, destroying property, all while grinning for the camera. Princess Owusu Ansah. She positioned her phone on the table, hit record, and started live-streaming on Snapchat. What followed was a calculated attack. Boiling water, a knife, screaming. And at one point, she turned to the camera and grinned. She was performing. And hundreds of people watched it happen in real time. Princess Owusu Ansah was 18 years old, no prior criminal record, grew up in Royston, Hertfordshire, about 40 miles north of London. To anyone looking at her social media, she was just another teenager. But beneath the surface, Owusu Ansah harbored intense jealousy and rage toward a 17-year-old girl she considered a romantic rival. The victim's name is protected under UK law. What we know is that she was 17, vulnerable, and had some connection to someone Owusu Ansah was interested in. This perceived love triangle was enough to trigger what happened next. On February 2, 2023, Owusu Ansah traveled from Hertfordshire to East Dulwich, about 30 to 40 miles. This wasn't spontaneous. She had planned the attack and brought weapons. She arrived at the victim's home around 11 at night and gained entry. Once inside, Owusu Ansah confronted the 17-year-old. She accused her of sleeping with people's man and demanded an apology. The victim tried to protect herself by pulling a duvet over her body, a blanket as a shield. That's all she had. And then Owusu Ansah did something that would define this case. She positioned her phone on a table and began broadcasting the assault live on Snapchat. What happened next was captured in full. Owusu Ansah grabbed a kettle of boiling water. She poured it over the victim, who was still trying to shield herself with the blanket. The victim screamed in agony. Boiling water causes second and third-degree burns. The pain is excruciating. Standing over the burned, terrified girl, Owusu Ansah yelled, "Don't embarrass me! Don't piss me off! I've got a knife!" She climbed onto the bed. She bashed a silver knife against the wall repeatedly, a display of intimidation. Then she stabbed the victim in the thigh. Throughout the attack, she destroyed sentimental items belonging to the victim, photos, keepsakes, personal belongings. This wasn't just about physical harm. It was about total destruction. And at one point during the live stream, Owusu Ansah turned to the camera and grinned. She was enjoying this. She was performing, and somewhere people were watching. The victim eventually managed to flee. She ran into the street seeking help. She was treated at King's College Hospital for second-degree burns, a stab wound to the thigh, multiple bruises, and severe psychological trauma. But here's the thing about live streaming your crimes. People see them. A viewer watching the Snapchat live stream immediately contacted police while the attack was still happening. That quick action may have saved the victim from even worse injuries. 3 days later, police arrested Owusu Ansah at her home. The evidence was overwhelming. They had the entire attack on video. Multiple witnesses had watched it live. Digital forensics recovered the full footage even though she tried to delete it. On March 6, 2023, Owusu Ansah appeared at Woolwich Crown Court before Judge Vanessa Barretzer, the same judge who presided over Julian Assange's extradition proceedings. Faced with video evidence of her crime broadcast to potentially hundreds of people, Owusu Ansah had no viable defense. She pleaded guilty to grievous bodily harm with intent and criminal damage. Judge Barretzer stated, "It was made significantly worse by the fact that you put the footage on a social media site so that friends and family would be able to view it." The live stream wasn't just documentation. It was deliberate humiliation, a way to traumatize not just the victim, but everyone who knew her. Judge Baratzer sentenced Owusu Ansah to 3 years in a young offenders institution. The sentence sparked intense debate. Critics called it a slap on the wrist. 3 years for pouring boiling water on someone and stabbing them. The victim has lifelong scars. The attacker gets 3 years. Under UK sentencing norms, she was eligible for release after serving just half her sentence, 18 months. By late 2024, Princess Owusu Ansah was likely a free woman, subject to probation, a restraining order, and potential restrictions on social media use, but free nonetheless. The victim still lives with second-degree burn scars that will likely be permanent. A visible stab wound scar, post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, trust issues, and the knowledge that her torture was broadcast live for entertainment. Owusu Ansah isn't alone. She's part of a growing trend of attackers live-streaming violence on social media. School fights on Instagram, assaults on Facebook Live, attacks posted to TikTok. The motivations are disturbing. Public humiliation, seeking validation from viewers, demonstrating power to peers, creating a permanent record to intimidate victims. The fact that one viewer called police shows the positive potential of witnesses. But it also raises a darker question. How many people watched without doing anything at all? 10 cases, 10 teenage girls, 10 acts of violence that shocked investigators, traumatized families, and left communities asking the same question. How did we miss this? The only thing they had in common. They proved that evil doesn't have an age requirement. If you made it this far, subscribe, because the stories we cover next are even darker. Click here for the next video.